Ladies and gentlemen, loyal listeners, welcome back to another episode of Steve and Lynda Make a Podcast. Steve and Lynda couldn't make it today, but as always, in their stead, I'm Brendan.
I'm Dan.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Parker.
And we're so glad that you lent us your ears. So today, what we were planning on talking about was a concept that I'm calling boiling pots. And I'm thinking maybe I'll hold off on what exactly that question or what that metaphor exactly is, because that's actually the main topic of our conversation today. But we wanted to start with a new segment of listener questions, because we, in I guess what you would call our brand new emperors of the podcast world status, have all of one person
Listener
who's interested enough to ask detailed questions. So shout out to good old Adam Joshua. Hey, before we get to your question, I just wanted to say real quick, sorry it didn't work out with that Honda Civic that I was trying to sell you.
Throwback.
I don't know if you remember it. Yeah.
Also, Adam, just ease off a bit, because the letters are becoming a little bit creepy, and it's just a little possessive. So we're your friends, but let's just keep this casual.
We also like to keep the inbox relatively clean, because we want to make sure that we catch any sponsor requests coming through. We don't want to clutter it up with shit.
Really, lastly, it is an adult podcast, but there's no reason for that language most of the time. I just find it unprofessional. So, Brendan, take it away.
Yeah, okay. I think, Dan, did you want to read what Adam had to ask?
Sure, and like Parker said, this is a bit profane, so if you're listening with children in the room, definitely take this as an opportunity to teach them some fun words. So, question goes...
We can also just cue up the old goat bleep.
Yeah, we'll go bleep it. Steve and Lynda, perhaps a bit dry, but how does one deal with the legal side of starting a business? What type of legal entity do you use or will you use for your businesses? Are you prepared if someone sues your ass? Are you ready for tax season? Best of luck, Adam Joshua. And you snuck in a couple there, so we're going to tackle them, I guess, one at a time. But thank you again for the question. It sounds like you had some lovely older siblings raising you, just by your questions, we can tell. All right, who wants to start out with the legal side? Anybody have a legal business entity? Anybody?
I can start with answering a couple of these pieces just from my point of view. And I think that it's best to, start a story at the end. So tax season, oh God, no, I don't know what I'm doing for that. But I will say that I've established an LLC. So hopefully if somebody does, begin to want to sue me because my graphics are that bad and life altering, thinking about that is a little absurd, but it's better to have that backup.
Disappointment is a legal statute.
Yes, yeah, that would be you know what? I take it back. That might be the low point of a career, is if they're like, wow, this logo was so horrendous that we need to go to small claims court because it's just the damage is already done. And yeah, no.
When did you form an LLC?
In April. Yeah. It's really just it's for taxes in particular, just so I can do write-offs and stuff like that, and then can kind of separate, paying for Adobe, paying for X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. But it makes sense. Yeah, and I definitely would recommend doing that if you're starting a company or anything.
I think also why the question is sort of why an LLC, because I know there are so many acronyms. Almost all of them seem to have an L in them. Do you know what they mean? And do you know why an LLC was the appropriate choice for you?
For me, I think it's just the LLC stands for Limited Liability Company, right? I think.
Yes.
So from pretty much what I've been told is it pretty much separates you as the individual. It's pretty much just like a umbrella to hide under, I think. I mean, hopefully you don't have to use it as that, but like mine's a personal LLC, so it's still pretty much me, but it's just not like linking my personal, like, I don't know. Yeah. It's about
So it does in some way protect you from, it's sort of a barrier legally from customers or other businesses?
Yeah, it pretty much just like makes me not personally liable from like company debts, I guess, or any sort of like liabilities. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that gets into the preparation for ass suing. So at least Parker's prepared. We know that.
Are you prepared, Dan?
I will be so prepared shortly.
That's a future tense verb you just used there.
I will be so prepared. I've done a little bit of the LLC game myself in the past. And it is a little bit of a hassle when you set it up as to be taxed as a partnership and you're not making any money and you still have to file taxes. That was the bane of my existence every April between the years of 2017 and 2020.
Real quick. So are you talking about a different acronym?
No, it's also an LLC, but you can kind of choose the way in which you're taxed if you're a partnership or if there are it's technically a multi-member LLC, where I think Parker, you're probably a single member LLC, and that's probably what I'll pursue as well.
Sole proprietor.
And I think you basically get, for your tax purposes, like a different schedule. You file taxes on behalf of the LLC. At least this is how it works for the partnership. You file your taxes for the partnership, and then that produces a Schedule K1 for each member of the LLC. And then when you file like your individual 1040, you include that schedule.
I'm also pretty sure that you can sign your emails as a doctor. I think that that's another thing that is very important.
Okay.
Sell point.
That'll be awesome then.
I did that teaching is put my name on the board as Dr. Farrell all the time.
Were they just like, yeah, no, this guy's legit. Like, yeah, like.
Oh, actually, maybe it was one of the kids who did it. And they just thought it was the chuckliest little thing in the world. And then the one time I was like, there are real doctors in this building, and I don't know if I should be fronting on their territory like that. But then, who gives a shit?
It might just be more awkward because, be one of those things where like, oh, Brendan, I didn't know you got, like, when did you get your doctorate? And you'd be like, I
think it was 1997.
Well, yeah, after the Second War, I, found some downtime.
To be clear, LLCs don't protect you from medical malpractice, right? You can't just put your name as a doctor everywhere.
I don't think so.
Well, that wasn't clear to me, so.
Ian, have you filed any kind of
taxes ever? No. I'm kidding. I want to be very clear that I'm kidding.
To the 3 IRS folks who
Parker's laugh does not help you there. I'm kidding. And one of the podcast hosts is cracking up in the corner.
They've got my receipts.
Have you signed up for an LLC, or have you thought about it and looked into it?
I have thought about it. My thought so far is that it's kind of like a big cost to pay up front for something that's not making money yet. So I think I'm going to leave that for a little bit down the road.
Okay.
But like, I know a couple people who've started them, like Dan, we'll get into this, but you had that one for the game company. And then like, I think my mom started one at some point, a friend from college. So it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. Well, Parker, you too. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like it's all that difficult to get it going. Just kind of like a headache around like tax time.
Dan and I walked through this a bit ago when we were trying to figure out whether I should be basically filing an LLC for Forest Floor. And it is actually, we waded through some language. So if you're listening and you are actually interested in just legitimizing your business, or like Parker was saying, like it is sort of a legal barrier and it can be protective. And like everyone else is saying, like you probably should tell people about your taxes. If you need to do that, or that's something you're interested in, you can go to I think www.dos.pa.gov. And the forms are actually in there and they're fairly straightforward.
Brendan, you missed a marvelous opportunity to plug Steve and Lynda make a podcast.com.
And we'll have those forms for you on the website.
Everyone quiet. Everyone quiet. Hey, you, listener, have some time on your hands these days? Got a computer? Internet access? Steve and Lynda make a podcast.com. That's Steve and Lynda. Lynda with a Y. Why? Because that's how she spells her name. There we go. Plug. Done.
Oh, that was great. That was fantastic.
And if it's not clear by the tone and hesitation which we're describing some of these things, we are not your legal advisors and never will be. So you're gonna want to look up everything on your own.
Based on Parker's logic, is when you have an LLC, you're allowed to say you're a lawyer.
I think it's the same thing, yeah, Esquire. But yeah,
Dr. Esquire Parker.
I have a friend who's a friend. What up, Brett McGinnis? Holla at your boy.
Whoa.
He's
multiple shout outs this epi.
Who's the other one?
Adam.
Adam.
Oh yeah. What up, Adam?
The listener, the sole listener.
He just got his diploma from a school that we attended together, and he really did.
Don't be shy. Which school?
It was one of the elementary schools in Phoenixville. No, I feel bashful about it. But he ended up
that's fine.
With Esquire at the end of his name. Nobody asked questions. It's on his diploma.
His last name's Esquire?
Brett McGinnis Esquire.
That's a great name.
What does Esquire signify? Is there
a magazine?
I think it just means you have an LLC.
It means you performed at least 3 heart surgeries.
Sorry, Dan is being a responsible.
And so hopefully that answers your question, Adam, and keep them coming because we're going to give you totally useful information anytime you ask a question.
You know what, Adam?
And again,
yeah, you're getting a Steve and Lynda t-shirt, buddy. It's coming to you.
Well, okay, come on.
Dude, just stop. The audience is going to love that shit. Just like...
Merch.
So, to summarize, yeah, I mean, some of us are protected, and I think it is an important question to ask. I think Ian's point about just weighing when and why that is the right choice is important. So, Parker, you've got one, right? Dan, you had one. You don't have one now, though, for the freelance stuff you're doing, do you?
No. I think as things pick up, that's definitely something I want to look at for start of 2021.
Right. And I think it's the same for me. So like Ian, Dan, me, we're all more or less saying, yes, it's something we plan on doing. But as we're doing things now, even if it is just like fill out paperwork and it's a somewhat small fee, it's just hard to justify that fee if there's really no benefit to it to us right now. But in the long term, for sure, there is going to be both a tax organizational benefit and a protective legal benefit too. And usually for small businesses, it's an LLC. Right?
I can't speak to the frequency in which small businesses incorporate without looking that up. But yeah, something like that. Yeah. This is me trying not to lead anybody down a dark path where they...
We're not providing
kind of crooked structure that they shouldn't advice. Be engaging. Yeah. I'll just triple down on that.
Yeah. Super disclaimer. Maybe we should all say it in unison.
Yeah, that's going to be a disaster.
Time duck up. Come on.
Yeah, so let's get to our main topic. Adam, thanks so much for the question. And if you, loyal listener, have a question of your own, please send it our way. Do we have an email set up, Dan?
Yeah, we do. It's pretty official. It is Steve and Lynda make a podcast at gmail.com. Lynda spelled with a Y.
Why? Because that's how she spells her
that's how
fucking
she
name, you guys.
Okay. That got more aggressive than the last time we said that.
You guys keep asking. So let's boil some pots, ladies and germs. So, the metaphor, the boiling of pots, basically just had a thought, probably during our last episode or during any of our conversations, about the efficacy, and I may have already said this, I can't remember if we cut this out from our false start at the beginning of this episode or not. The efficacy of putting all of your energies and resources into one avenue or one central project as a freelancer versus putting your energies into multiple projects. And what are the positives and negatives of each of those sort of choices? So again, sort of just following the general round robin, or maybe even we can open this one up a little bit more. Does any one of you have a general take on your decision about whether you're going full bore on one thing versus spreading all 8 octopus limbs into different cookie jars? That's a new metaphor that I might change it into. Boiling pots now is octopus tentacles.
In an actual cookie jar. I think, you know, when people make stickers, can we have that be like one of the weird things? Parker, you can draw a tentacle in a cookie jar, right?
Of course, that's just what I do for a living.
We'll get that. We'll get that. That'd be a nice background for our video-less YouTube uploads, just like the tentacle. Maybe like 4-frame animation, the tentacle just like slithering into that jar and then out. We just loop that. Okay, I'll stop perseverating on that. Let's move past it.
Dan, do you have a thought?
Sure, I have a thought. By definition, for me, this is a little bit wonky. So with a full-time job, I can't necessarily spend all my time on any one of those things. It's, you know, pretty important that gets the bulk of my attention and that I'm not cutting any corners there. Because like the last thing that I would ever want and that I would encourage others to avoid is like, you probably don't want your full-time job, if that's what you're relying on, to suffer at the hands of whatever you're boiling on the side. So that's kind of very much how I approach dedicating time, at least in that respect. Among the things that I'm doing on the side, I am taking a very scattered approach at the moment, and I think there are positives, but there are a lot of negatives too, I think. And that's something that I've always struggled with, and it perpetually feels like I could use, I don't know, another week for each of those things during each day. You know, I wish I had infinite time to tackle things, but I think that's where it gets hard to prioritize the things that you care about most.
But you would say that at least the way things are going now, you would prioritize like one thing, your official suit and tie job gets basically 1A priority.
Yeah, and if I had to wear an actual suit and tie, that would be deprioritized immediately.
Yeah, and I think you expand the question already in a way that I'm glad that you did. So it's not just
sorry.
No. Again, I'm glad that you did. So it's not just like, you know, again, we assume we're all talking from our own perspectives and that's the perspective. But yeah, Dan, you have a full-time job. The three of us, for different reasons, don't. And I think there is something inherent in this question about how many different avenues should you be putting your energies into, that is also kind of, should you be holding on to somewhat of a safety net? Because having something that you're just more certain about is either A, distracting, or let's see, what kind of other language can we use about full-time jobs? Deadening, dangerous, or B, freeing, because it allows you some kind of, I don't know, alleviation of anxiety about what, where this next set of income is going to come from.
There are so many avenues here, guys. We're going to get lost in these tangents so fast.
I will say,
yeah.
I do think like I don't know. This is maybe, well, anyway, like fear is a powerful motivator, and so like not having something to fall back on, like it creates a certain like urgency or like I don't know. Yeah, like whatever you're pursuing has a little bit more significance because it's like you don't have the 9 to 5 to go to and like count on that income, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I feel like it is a little bit of a motivator if you are not, or at least for me, I'll speak for myself. If I'm not like focused on the day job, or I don't have the certainty that there's going to be like a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, it's like, it's good. It like lights a little bit of a fire. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's like, I don't know if this is biologically accurate, but I've got an LLC, so I'm a biologist, and
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. That there's some concept that, so if you were to take like a cheetah and a gazelle as an example, the reason a
This is
cheetah,
gonna get nasty.
you ready? The reason a cheetah has to be so incredibly fast is because a gazelle can outlast a cheetah when it's just running at like its pace. And so the gazelle or the cheetah has to catch the gazelle now because the gazelle is going to just keep grinding out because it wants to live. Fear is motivating it, whereas the cheetah's like hunger is motivating it. And I think those are sort of opposing forces, and I think, Ian, that might, I don't know if this is,
Yeah.
you guys know what I'm saying.
I think we're thinking along the same lines. That's one of Aesop's fables, isn't it? The hound and the hare.
Oh, maybe so.
Hare runs faster because it's running for its life, and the
Right. There we go.
hound's only running for its lunch. Yeah, I think, and yeah, that is kind of what I was referring to. Yeah, just the idea that you, or at least I, run faster from something than for something. I don't know. So maybe I'm like running from destitution, or I don't know what the metaphor is here, but
I don't know what the metaphor is, but we're accumulating animals awful quickly.
Yeah, a nice little menagerie. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
Cool.
important to live in
word.
fear.
But like, why do we laugh at that? So like, Ian, there's some truth in what you're saying.
Yeah.
And somehow we do have this notion that like, yeah, but I don't know, maybe it's something about like acknowledging that out loud feels absurd. So it's some version of trying not to acknowledge that is real.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like a pride-saving laugh.
Yeah. I don't know.
I laugh because when I hear Ian say fear is a powerful motivator, I'm writing in my little notebook like list of people to be careful around. Like Ian goes down. I'm like, man, that's such a bummer. I didn't think Ian was going to make it into this book.
To clarify, I mean, it's motivating for me, not I would use it as a tool to motivate other people.
All right, I'll erase it.
No, please, you can keep me in there. I don't.
No, please. I'll write it down again.
You got to do what you feel comfortable with. And if I've scared you, then I probably belong in there. But I want the world to know.
Dan, you're just that little bit extra motivated.
Yeah, there we
Parker,
go. We've come full circle.
Where do you stand on either one of these questions, the usefulness of a safety net, or its sort of cousin question, the value of having a bunch of different, Dan said the obvious, the better metaphor, eggs in baskets, eggs in different baskets. Is that increasing the probability that you'll succeed in hatching a chicken? Or should we be putting a bunch of eggs in one basket because it's easier to keep that basket warm?
So I'm just a little confused because
is it the metaphors?
it could be that, or I don't know where I play into this cheetah gazelle thing, but it's also I guess like being like a self-described graphic designer or just designer. I feel like I'm probably just going to be pushing towards doing something kind of artistic or creative, and like whether one day it's like putting in a deck for a house, or one day it's painting a mural, or one day it's making a business card for like a local company. It's all kind of, to me, it's all working towards the same goal.
Mm.
So that's like, I don't know. I just don't know where I kind of sit with that, you know?
Mm. Yeah, because if
all my eggs are going to the same place. So I don't know.
Mm. It's like you've got a bunch of tiny egg baskets inside one larger egg basket.
I have snake eggs, chicken eggs, and I'm delivering to a zoo. So it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter.
I think that's really interesting. Again, thank you both for expanding that question. Yeah. So like, how would basically it sounds like you're saying is how you can understand your project in flexible ways. So like, would you say that you're working on one project, or are you working on a bunch of different sort of threads of the same general project?
I guess that I'm working on a bunch of different threads of one. Yeah. I guess that makes sense. Go ahead. No, I'm just saying it all kind of builds towards the same goal, I guess, which is convincing myself that I don't need a full-time job.
Parker, if you haven't convinced yourself, you've at least convinced me, for whatever that's worth.
Dan, so I'm sensing a difference in the like different avenues of your energies versus Parker's different avenues. So like if Parker has a sense that he can thread them all together, yours seem like they kind of have to be somewhat separate, right? Like if, full-time job is entirely different from, videography or creating content or marketing materials. Do you think, I don't know what my question there would be. Elaborate.
I'll be happy to answer it. Just straight elaborate, period. I guess, so maybe one of the interesting things to dig into is like, Parker, how do you view separate clients then? Because I think I would view those things as in the same way. Like if I have multiple clients, they're all in support of like what I call Dan Yoshua Creative.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like if it's the Dan Yoshua brand.
But
sorry, go on.
Some of the other things, like I would differentiate. So that would be an egg for me, right? So full-time, big ostrich egg. And then you got like a little chicken egg for Dan Yoshua Creative. And then you start to get into these like, what's smaller than that? Little quail eggs would
Fish
be
eggs.
some of like the personal projects. Yeah, fish eggs even. Like I'm doing some YouTube stuff, but even that is split between two different channels, each of which have very distinct efforts. So that's kind of where my mind goes. Like, is it smart to split up time? Probably not. I wouldn't recommend to anybody to start two YouTube channels at the same time and race against each other. But that's exactly what I'm doing. It's super painful. At the same time, you kind of get to see how those perform individually. But I think I'm well past the point where I should have taken one of them to focus on and deprioritize the other.
Don't you think, sense. Though, we've talked about a sort of self-feeding ecosystem that, we plug we plug this thing. Oh, Brendan. Come buy some mushrooms from me, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, like Parker's working on this the imagery for this podcast. And at the same time, we can talk about things that he's doing, and it may not bring him customers necessarily, but it's like we're talking about it. Maybe that's some way of, I don't know, developing the two things together. Do you think, Dan, that there is any bit of like those two different channels feeding each other? Or is there something about having different like outlets that have, I don't know, so if you have like creative thing versus a slightly more numbers thing, I guess, is it useful to satisfy those different parts of your personality, or those different parts of what you need from an occupation?
Yeah, I think there is still some usefulness in having some of the divergent things that I'm doing, which is probably why I'm still doing them. But I don't know. I still feel like I'm too scattered because it's kind of like that feeling that I was describing earlier. I never feel like I have enough time for any one thing. But it's hard because in the beginning, especially financially, you don't know necessarily the promise of some of the projects. So it's tough to make the call like, oh, I want to stop putting effort into this because you don't know. Oh,
I just lost somebody.
Is everybody okay?
Parker's not talking, so I think we know what that means.
He's dead.
I passed away.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing that holds me, that makes it difficult for me to like pick and choose, reprioritize, and reallocate my time. Is like, some of these things I really like doing, or to your point, I'm still learning different things or have a different outlet for certain efforts, which is the benefit of having them. And I get to figure out more about what I want to do ultimately by doing a few different things. But I do feel starved for time and effort on every single one of them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, maybe that's kind of to Ian's point, maybe that's the bet I would have had to have made already if I was relying on one of them to be profitable, say.
Mm.
But in my position, I don't, because that biggest egg, I don't have to guess if my day job is profitable. as long as I'm not spending a shit ton of money every year, like it is, to do it myself. And that's just not the case when you're working for someone else in a traditional job. It's not like I have to put any money to spend to get that revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, time is my limiting factor. And while I may feel like I don't have enough of it to treat everything, equally, it's not a question of I need to cut my efforts off on some of these in order to funnel into another so that I can make it profitable and keep going.
Yeah.
So that's it's like, as painful as it is, it's a luxury that I have at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's complicated. So that, yeah. The amount of like free time versus, or let's see. So, when you are going 24 hours a day on a bunch of different things and you have no downtime, for me, that is almost always A, incredibly painful and exhausting and harrying and all of that stuff, and B, the only way that I can be fairly productive. And so for me, having those different things is like kind of necessary. To have a bunch of different outlets feels like the only way that any one outlet could possibly be successful. Because if I'm not, like if I end up sleeping in for a day and I've made the decision that I'm only going to start things going at like 10:30 for creating or for growing the mushrooms, then I'm not going to get any tutoring stuff done either. But if I get some of this stuff done, it's almost like doing things and committing to things, because my motivation is such a like specific weird little key lock that like is impossible to decipher. I end up having to, or like do, when I'm able to do something and get that ball rolling, the other balls have more time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically when I have less time, I actually end up having more time. It's like I've committed to doing something, and now instead of just wasting the next hour, I'm actually going to commit to doing something else. Is that a phenomenon that any of you experience?
Like sort of stacking the calendar to keep rolling?
Yeah, basically.
I would say I don't need that personally to keep doing stuff, but I feel like that's very descriptive of how I think I've been working over the past couple months for sure.
But not necessarily by design, like it's just happens to be the way that you have been doing
Like
it.
I don't need that to stay productive per se. I will say that helps. I feel like when you have a couple different things, it helps when you get stuck on something, you can switch to something else.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's
and that's awesome.
When the when I was thinking about this question, part of it is like, are you just increasing the probability that any one of the projects you're working on is going to succeed? Are you actually like, is it a zero-sum game where you are sucking resources from your daytime job in order to like you're phoning it in at work in order to have the energy to do these other things? Or is it like I was trying to say a minute ago, like weirdly not a zero-sum game? It's like when you get the ball rolling, when you have a bunch of things going on, maybe for me at least, it seems like those tend to go better. But then the other sort of question in there is also like, what are the things that satisfy you, and how much of you, like when you are stuck on one thing, maybe you're stuck on that one thing because it's a creative project and you're sort of sapped creatively. That doesn't mean you're out of resources, because you also have like an intellect that you A, want to satisfy, and B, want to tap as a resource. And when you can switch gears to that other thing, I don't know, isn't it kind of nice, just even fulfilling to have those separate things? We had a lot of crickets. Y'all could just cut out most of what I've been saying.
No, I see where you're coming from. It's just so like alien to me that I don't know how to relate to you anymore. It's like, no, like the more stuff I have going on, the less well any of it goes. And that's, I don't know, that just seems to be a rule. So I can kind of like, I can fit this concept into my head, but it's uncomfortable. If I can put it that way. That
probably means you're a very productive individual, Ian.
Nah, not really.
So what do you do when you get stuck? Phrased a different way, maybe. Like real stuck. Like you're working on completing some kind of feature and you're having a fucking bad time and you just want to stop doing it.
Or are you asking me, or are you asking Brendan?
Oh, I'm asking you.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I just like keep banging my head against the wall.
Flip a few tables and get back to it, or?
No, not even that. I just I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just I don't know. I'm a little bit masochistic in that way. I think I'll just keep going at it until something happens.
But do you find that like that ends up like, what's your success rate?
I mean, eventually, yeah, like eventually you figure, I won't say anything out because that's incredibly like, but like, yeah, if you just keep giving something your attention, I feel like eventually it'll give up. Like the problem will give up. It might take a long.
Ian's so strong.
No, it's not. It's not like I don't know. I guess maybe this was the way I was brought up, or I don't know if it's part of my personality, or but just like being willing to like be uncomfortable for an extended period of time, which like, you know, having something that like is getting the better of you, I think that's just a flavor of that. But I don't know. Yeah, I think like my only skill is that I'm like comfortable just sitting with things that I'm not doing well at and just like keeping at it. Yeah,
it's so admirable.
I don't know. That's how I get things done. It's not like, I don't know. I have this concept of, Well, like you know people out there who are like just super smart and everything comes to them really like easily, and they just seem like they can.
Three of them are on this call.
No, but you know the kind of person I'm talking about. And that always impresses me.
Yes, you three.
But no, because like I don't know, like actually accomplishing anything is like really difficult, and I think like we all have our own. Like there are different parts of that process that we all like each of us struggle with, but I don't know. Like then I see people like that who just seem like they can like pick something up and run with it and it's like no problem. You know, the kind of people who like start companies when they're teenagers and like I don't know, they just seem to have it all going. And I'm like, how do I get me some of that? How does
my turn?
Yeah. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what you're working on. Can I introduce a new character?
Whoa.
Oh, I didn't mean to catch anybody off guard. Ian, you sometimes you work on a bus conversion.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
That may not be related so much to the money printer, but do you spend time on that during the day? Is that a respite sometimes?
See, that's kind of like, yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because I haven't worked on it significantly, like kind of since I started this whole thing.
Okay, wow. Should we back off our cadence so that you can get back to it?
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
The listeners are hungry.
Yeah, no, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where like I can do like one thing at a time and really like give my attention to it, but I can't split it, and that seems like the less pressing thing.
Gotcha.
You know, it's that fear of destitution thing.
Wow. Okay.
Like if I don't get the other thing working, then I really will be living in a bus.
But at least you have the bus.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. Are we talking? I guess I have never really introduced the bus. Should I? Dan, you tell me. Should I introduce the bus?
I did it for you, but you could tell us a little bit more about her if you wanted.
Dan,
I think it's an interesting marriage with what you're doing as your primary hustle.
Okay. Well, okay.
Right, because it's like what's the whole premise?
So the premise is I bought a vehicle to turn into a dwelling. So we bought like an old, not super old, but a used like short bus, and we're converting it into kind of like a camper RV live-in situation. And ultimately we want to like do the whole digital nomad thing and kind of like travel around the country and see yeah.
First time we said that on here.
Yeah, that's cool.
It won't be the last.
Well, I don't know, it seems like a neat lifestyle, or at least it seems like something that would be interesting to try. And so I don't know, like I like a nice like challenge, and converting a bus is actually more of a challenge than I expected it to be, but it's a challenge. So yeah, it just seems like a cool way to like work on a like out there project and also get to do some moving around. But
how intentional were you about thinking like basically working on that project and algorithmic trading as the two projects you're working on now? Because that's what I'm sort of saying is they seem to fit together because, like you said, digital nomad, that whole lifestyle seems to fit into both of those categories, or it seems to fit as a possibility in both of those things.
Yeah, I think like most of the stuff I've been doing over the past like year and a half have been kind of like aimed at that. That was kind of the idea with the last job, actually, was that it was, yeah,
untethered.
It had the remote flexibility, and but then it did turn out not to have the like time flexibility so much, so it doesn't really do any good to be able to travel if, yeah, I don't know, if you're just working the whole time. But so that was kind of like the first step towards that, like the realization of that kind of sort of, yeah, lifestyle. And the bus was, it was kind of like a hybrid thing, because it was, we got it right when kind of the pandemic was taken off. And I think we were kind of having the realization that, like, we weren't going to be able to travel in the way we had hoped, at least not as soon as we had planned. Like, we were thinking we were going to be leaving this fall. And so the bus was kind of a nice way to like have something to work on that would remind us that that was like the eventual goal. Like, just kind of like a mood boost. Like,
So you do, yeah. So like this, I think, is getting us back to that whole thing that like sometimes I think these different avenues do feed each other, even if you at any given moment feel like hyper focused.
yeah, that's
There is some kind of
interesting.
like flexibility in your what you need in the morning versus the afternoon versus the night, or like this month versus next month. So I don't know, this is just something that I'm experiencing a lot, this weirdly floating, basically it's a lack of discipline and dedication to anything is how I would phrase it. But I'm also trying to justify it because I don't know, I wonder if this whole notion of discipline and hyper focus on one thing, some people's personalities, that serves them well. And I think, Ian, it sounds like in part it does serve you well. And I think it serves all of us well to differing degrees. But I just wonder if that's a weird narrative that has become prevalent in a world that's so focused on specification. When even you, Ian, who I would argue is like, I don't know, of the people that I know and love, one of the most able to put your head down and grind through one specific thing. Because I feel so much on the opposite end of that spectrum. I feel like I need to be juggling a whole bunch of things. Otherwise, I don't feel like I do any one thing well.
Yeah.
And even you, who I would put, in my estimation, pretty far on that end of the spectrum, still, I'm at least reading into what you're talking about now, some need, like at least some, right? We can't just be drones, or we can't just have one very specific. Do you actually, though?
It's another episode, man. Can't get into that today.
It's interesting. I wonder if there's like, it seems like like, I don't know, there's something to do with time in what you're saying. Like it seems like you may just have like a higher like period of like refocus. And for whatever reason, mine is like lower. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think so. Again, though, I would phrase it as the exact opposite, that you have a higher degree of attention span, and I have a far lower degree of attention span. But I guess
that's another way to frame it. But I see what you're saying, and it does seem like a continuum.
And I think if there's any value in this conversation, and again, listeners, can certainly debate that.
And leave a review and a rating.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be less than 5 stars, maybe don't.
But I do think that if there's any value in talking about this stuff, well, first of all, it's just like, as usual, we run a pretty wide gamut of, of different personalities, different needs, different work styles, and different creative styles, and all of that. And I think maybe the reason I'm picking on it so hard is that I always had this notion that I was so sort of the reason I'm like we're both sort of being self-deprecating about our framing of these things. But the part of the reason I am doing that is because I really did at a certain point feel a significant amount of weakness in myself and shame for not being able to focus in and not being able to do one thing really well the way that all sort of disciplines sort of romanticize, or the way that all, at least it's felt like to me growing up, and has for a long time, even as an adult, the way that society seems to glorify or romanticize a lifestyle. And it's taken a long time for me to figure out that, and maybe I haven't yet figured out, but it's taken a while for me to get comfortable with the notion that actually the most useful thing for me just doesn't happen to match with that. It might feel like inefficient to be jumping from a dozen different things to a dozen other different things on any given day. But for me, that has yielded the most success. And I just hope that all of the young, all you young listeners out there, coming close. Uncle Brendan has a word for you.
Oh my, not Uncle Brendan.
Just because working hard means something very different coming from you than it means coming from folks who have skills and dispositions that match better.
Who have skills, period.
Yes,
you don't
yeah,
have skills,
right.
young listeners.
But just because folks have skills and dispositions that match with what is demanded of people today does not mean that you can't have victories.
See, I think you're framing it in a certain way because because you've lived it, and you have whatever negativity is associated with your experience of kind of I guess I don't know, having a yeah. But I see, like, from my perspective, the thing that you're describing, and maybe I'm not understanding it well, but like seems to be something that society values, like the ability to like move around and change focus and like be adaptable and like kind of go with the flow, which is something I struggle endlessly with. And so I'm like, I guess I would be curious if you like, do you see any like positive sides of that kind of tendency? Like, do you feel like you're more adaptable and like willing to shift focus?
Oh yeah. And yet I do still find things, I don't know. That's a very good question. Certainly yes. And also I think those take a lot of looking for me, but maybe it's just like that I feel that I am fairly hard on myself, or fairly self-deprecating, or whatever. Yeah, it's tricky. I also want to emphasize that that both versions of this thing are obviously valuable in their own right. It's just a matter of what is expected of you from the world that you're in. And I don't know, maybe I'm mislabeling what is sort of requested of us from the sort of market world that we live in. But it certainly feels like that sometimes. And again, maybe if like I can step outside of myself and articulate why I want to have these conversations, then I would again say, like, if you feel these things and you feel like you're always pushing against the tides, or like feel like you're working especially hard, and you see folks succeeding in ways that you're not able to succeed with the same exertion of effort, I don't know, that there's nothing inherently bad about that. It's just something that may change as you change, and it also may change as the world changes. Parker, how do you feel about that?
About all of that?
Just about, yeah, because I certainly feel our working styles at least are fairly similar. How do you feel about like your ability to just give the world what it's asking of you as like a quote unquote professional?
That's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
So this has turned into Brendan's dark corner. Ladies and gentlemen listening in, this has been your preview of Brendan's dark corner. I'm doing fine, by the way. I do though think
we didn't ask. We didn't ask.
I do think that these conversations are useful. If I were a kid and I felt, obviously because there's, I don't know, kids listening to this. They're not. Everyone's asleep by now. Well, anyway, maybe I'll pivot to the last question that I wanted to ask. I don't know if there's much meat on it left anyway, and we'll feel that out. But I just got this notion of whether if you are training or developing some thing, how much thought do you put into how transferable and pivotable the skills that you're developing are, and how transferable and pivotable the infrastructure that you're building, or the relationships that you're building, or even just like the tools that you're purchasing? How much thought do you put into how transferable those things are or should be?
Can I tee something up for Parker here?
Throw me a softball.
That's both related. Softer than what you just tried to pitch him, Brendan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, listen.
Because it ties directly to this part of the question, but also a little bit to what we were talking about previously. And I'm curious because this is something. So, like Parker, you said you feel like pretty focused in terms of throwing everything that you're doing under like the graphic design bucket, right?
Yeah, more or less, or just design. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry to pigeonhole you into graphics. But like getting to the skills part, do you feel like you have skills that you're prioritizing getting better at within that design bucket? And do you try to like, at some level, I'm speaking from my own experience here, like at some level, you're kind of picking up clients based on your interest, but also partly based on like availability in terms of yours or theirs, or just like trying to make sure that you have enough stuff going on. But like, do you feel that you have some freedom to prioritize work in order to grow the particular skills that you're most interested in?
I think so. I think that like the other thing is like there's always going to be, I feel like you can always kind of spin a client to need to do certain things. Like if you want to learn motion, nobody's going to turn down a motion graphic. If you want to do, I don't know, I think like as far as like personal things, you're always working on, I don't know, sales, I guess, because you're always trying to pitch you as a product. So like I think that's another thing, like even aside from graphics, just like professionalism and selling that. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. No, I mean, I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, you can kind of mold any project into a route that you want to, I don't know, advance in.
Yeah, that's like one of the really useful benefits of faking things until you make
Yes,
them,
absolutely.
or faking it until you make it. It's like if you, I don't know, one of the best ways, this sort of is back to what Ian was saying, fear will whip you in the butt and then get you motivated. And like if you've promised yourself to somebody, right, if you've promised certain skills, or if you've promised, like you've marketed yourself as having a certain I don't know, value to them, but you don't have that value yet, you're probably going to figure it out pretty quick. Right? Is that at least in part what you mean? And it's like sometimes you even seek out promising those things to people just so that you can, or at least, you know, maybe I'm not asking the question, but like this is something I do. It's like I'm glad to offer certain things to tutoring students that I don't actually have the skills yet for, or I'm glad to offer this strain of black poplar mushrooms to a restaurant, even though I don't have the capacity yet to grow those things. But in promising it to someone, I'm probably going to put in the efforts and figure out how grow those things or how to learn those skills. Is that at least in part what you're asking, Dan?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking of it through that lens, but that's certainly like at the very core of entrepreneurship in terms of like tactics that are used. You see that all the time in like sign up lists or pre-sales
yeah,
or crowdfunding campaigns. Like people don't have a product or service necessarily yet, but they're floating that idea like, hey, I might have this physical product for you.
Right.
But I need 1,000 of you minions to put $100 up so that I can make it. And you're kind of talking about your skill set is the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think there's some. Yep.
Agreed.
Do you guys want to do updates? I know Parker's got some stuff at least in the pipeline, right?
Oh yeah. It's not super. Well, I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't. Well, yeah, it's very exciting. I'm super excited about it. It's just had some updates from the restaurant branding project that I was working on in Phoenixville. Looks like they chose a direction, so that's exciting. And then hopefully we're talking about doing some murals for that. And that's about it. Yeah.
Nice.
So are they going ahead with it? Can you say that on?
Yeah, it looks like it. They've like, yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Filed it down to 2 final options. So looks like they're gonna pick a real winner.
I'm convinced. Ian, have you had any successes lately?
Nah, no. How about you, Dan?
Oh man, nope.
That is way too quick. Dude, someone set a timer. You're gonna have to squirm through 2 minutes of a successful update here.
Yeah, no, it's been going pretty well. Let's see. What have I done since the last time we talked? I've got integrations working for 2 of the data providers I was considering. So that's good. And then I've also got the integration with the brokerage I'm going to use. So that's good.
Is this stuff that you had to build? What do you mean by an integration exactly?
Yeah, so like my software has to talk to their servers to get like historical price data and like yeah, like to like execute orders and stuff on my account, and like just really to do anything. It's like a conversation between like the software I'm writing and their servers. Mm-hmm. So you got to write to varying degrees. You got to write all that stuff.
Gotta lay those phone lines.
Yeah, the soft lines.
Are those all public APIs?
What do you mean?
Like, can anybody access that information?
Yeah, so you can get a free trial and they'll give you an API key, but they do want you to pay them. In some cases, quite a lot because
bastards.
Yeah, well, it's valuable data, and especially like if they can provide it in semi-real time, like that's
kind of what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Is it a graduated fee system where like the amount of data or the amount of money that you're printing changes the fee, or is it flat?
So on the input side with the data providers, it scales up, and because that's really all they have to charge you on is like how many requests, like what your rate is, and then like the volume of data that you're requesting with each one of those. On the brokerage side, you pay like per order that they fill. And so it's not to do with like size so much. It is to do with frequency. Well, actually I say that, but I guess it is to do with size too, because it's a lot of them are percentage based. I think some of them are flat, but long story short is you're paying people on both ends.
Sounds pricey.
Well, so that like I said, you can do the free trials, and then they're like the entry level tiers for some of these things are not insane. So like it'll be an expense, but it won't be a huge expense. Probably like I don't know, tens of dollars a month for the
okay.
data feed. Yeah, and it can get really, like, one of the things I was looking at, they charged up to like $700 a month just for data access. But like at my scale, I think I can get it going for pretty cheap.
I think we should have an episode where we get into the old dirty deets at some point.
Oh, dude,
I
there are
think
gonna be so many dirty deet episodes that I'm gonna push us toward, because I don't know. Money's weird.
Yeah,
I think people talk about money weirdly.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird societal thing.
It
I know
is.
there are reasons for not like completely opening up about some things.
Right.
And some things will be client specific, but
as soon as you got
I
that
don't know.
LLC, you're a wide open book and can't nobody touch it. No,
I'm going to set up 2 LLCs, one for my business and one for me to just be an ass in public.
I do think those are important conversations to have. The just like black and white numbers conversations. To whatever extent any of us are comfortable sharing those details, I'm going to be pretty transparent. So
I'll tell my accountant to start cooking. You're like, I got to impress all those listeners. Start cooking them.
I just listened to a Radiolab podcast about a series of numbers. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a mathematical concept that you can judge cooked books just by Benford's law. Yeah, basically you can, based on the likelihood that a 1 starts a series of numbers versus a 2 starting a series of numbers versus a 3, you can tell whether places have cooked their books. Good stuff. Radiolab, let's feed that self-sustaining ecosystem. Podcasts, I can tell you millions of them. One of them is Steve and Lynda make a podcast. Another one is Radiolab, and they're great.
If we're all saying another
degrees.
podcast, if we're all chipping in here, just maybe it's one podcast a week until we just exhaust the entire universe. Go check out Indie Hackers if you're into tech and entrepreneurship. It's lovely. Ian and I have talked about that in the past. They have a website for a community of people cooking up tech stuff on the side. I technically have a page there in which I'm already listing my revenue figures for Dan Yoshua Creative. So I've beaten you to the punch, Brendan.
Full transparency.
You can list milestones. It's a cool way to track some of the stuff that you're working on in public, if that's your thing.
Parker, what do you got going inside your earballs?
I've been doing are we listing them all out today?
just
do one. We'll each do one a week.
I've been doing still. I've been a loyal listener to the last podcast on the left, which is going to be a true crime podcast technically, but it's got some funny guys on it.
How long are their episodes?
So they range. Usually it's like under an hour, so but like 2 an hour. Yeah.
Tight 60 minutes.
There you
go. We'll get there one of these days.
No, we will not.
Yeah, no, we will not. Ian, what's going on I'm going to see another way to say this. What do you have, what kind of sounds are you injecting into your cerebellum?
God.
You mean podcast specifically?
Are you injecting other sounds in there?
Whoa, you gonna hit us with some music right now?
No. I wish I had an answer for you, but the last podcast I listened to was the one about that high school guy that murdered his high school girlfriend.
God. That is the first podcast that was ever made.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
Yeah, we'll plug it. Serial. What a great fucking podcast.
I didn't like it.
All right.
So, Ian, is this your favorite podcast, the one that we're recording live right now?
Yeah, technically, yeah, I guess, yes.
Oh,
dang, you have a lot of exploration to do to prep each week now.
All right, I'll get going.
I'll just feed you half of mine.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll all fill in Ian's slot once every 3 weeks.
Is this going to be a recurring thing? Like, okay, so we talked about Dan not listening to music. And now I've been outed as not listening to podcasts. Are you guys? Is there something that you guys don't engage in that we're going to find out in a few weeks?
Oh, wow. Parker, wait until episode 10 for that.
Don't be ashamed, Parker. It's one of the things we love about you most.
That's like a superpower, honestly.
That's not funny. It's a conditioning.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Dan, you got the floor. What has happened to you this week, or what have you done to the world this week?
Oh. I am going to defer that until next week.
Ooh.
Oh, baby. A little mystery show. You guys didn't know.
Something next week, maybe.
Nice. Are you going to tell us casually as just friends that know each other outside of podcasts?
Sure, but not right now.
I wasn't even convinced by that at all.
Yes.
Good. Well, what a gosh darn pleasure it hath been.
Well, hey, now you didn't let me squirrel out of my update. Brendan.
Oh yeah. Okay.
What have you been doing,
Got
man?
him.
Interesting to have had this week during the Boiling Pots podcast, because most of what I've been doing has again been waiting for people to get back to me, and I think that the time is running out on early next season, or like these interim winter market seasons. I may still be able to pull together, but I don't have enough people sort of committed, sort of like those $1 billion pre-sales. Don't have enough people that I feel confident I could shuck mushrooms to. So already sort of leaning into this pivot of creating these extracts. I know that it's been about 3 months that we've been saying this, but Parker and I, we got to figure out some labeling situations.
It's okay. Yeah.
Hey guys, here's a quick question. Next week, can you come back and tell us a small, tiny step that you did on that?
Ooh, an update.
Whoa.
A forced update.
Just
I refuse to be held hostage. I will not.
what about accountable?
No, unacceptable. That's genius. Thanks.
That's fair. Just a tiny step.
The old cheetah run.
A big step.
Oh wow!
The
Yeah,
gazelle
getting
runs.
greedy.
Yeah, I'll be the cheetah, guys. I
All
want
right.
a big, juicy, groundbreaking step. Lay it on me.
See, Ian, that's why your name went down in the notebook, man.
We've come full circle.
That's the last time I ever say on this podcast, like, oh, I wish I had gotten to that, because then I'm going to owe a big step.
I'm after you, Dan. I'll get you. Don't worry about it. No, I'm scared of retribution. Guys, please be nice.
All right.
That's cool.
Who's got our outro music for today? Dan, I think that it's landed on you by now.
So this is the thing. We botched an episode, as everyone's aware, and Ian had a great outro for that. Can I steal that and copy that forward, because I forgot to copy that last week?
Oh, absolutely.
And then I'll go next time.
Yeah.
And that's perfect, Ian, because there's not even any, you don't even have to get stressed about it right now like I am, because you've already done it and it's beautiful and it's playing right now. It's actually playing right now.
Perfect. Yep. Nope. If it's in the past, then there's nothing to be stressed about.
Wow.
So.
What? Oh, we can go out on that.
Have a great week, everybody.
That profound nugget of knowledge.
I should add that Steve and Lynda will be back next week.
Okay, that sounds good.
Right.
Should we do the rap?
Yeah, oh yeah.
The outro.
That's all, folks.
Is that it?